We created our chart price prediction scatter chart, but without adding user interactivity and really just looking at the result right now, this chart doesn't really tell us much. It's showing us some random dots around the chart, and it's really hard to tell what does it all mean. But if we add a mean line for both the price and the caret, that can really help us tell the story better of the price prediction. For example, if I were in the market to buy half a carat diamond ring, then I would expect, you can see here by the price, I would expect the price to start from around $300 and all the way to about $3,300. So I can sort of kind of have a better prediction of what I would expect to pay. The same with, for example, if I were in the market to buy 1.5 carat diamond, you can see that that the majority of the price sits around a price of around 3,000, or the same if I go up in carat, we can tell the story better by getting some kind of prediction of what kind of price and carat we should get. And so really adding the interactivity into our chart is really an important step that can help tell your story better. Go back to scatter chart component, and there's few things we need to take care of in terms of interactivity. The first thing we need to take care of is when we created our chart, we selected the dots, but we really didn't set them up. So we need to make sure that that after we enter the screen and we add the circles, we need to make sure that we have an attribute for the class, and we give it the name of dot. And that way, because every time we're going to resize the screen, what's going to happen, I'll show you. When we're going to resize the screen, if we don't take care of the removing the old dots, we have 50,000 results. They're just going to be compounded on top of each other if we don't clean up every time we resize the screen. So to clean up, we can either kind of update the data. So you can see, if I'm moving my browser, now it's using the same dot. If we don't set up the class name to match, it would not use the same dot. Take a look. If I'll remove the code of class, take a look, and I refresh my screen, and I resize, what's going to happen, you can see it just drew on top of each other. So there's two things we can do. First of all, we need to add that class dot, and then another thing we can do is in our memorize draw callback, we can just make sure that that everything got cleaned up. So to make sure it got cleaned up, we can use the D3 and do select all, and then pick those dots, and then use the remove, and that will make sure that we're cleaning up after ourselves. Now to create our mean lines, it's very similar to how we did it before when we created the mean line. What we can do is we can go to the end of the group, and the reason I'm using the end of the group is that way I'm going to ensure that those elements get added on the top. And you know, we can set it in the style, but it's you know, it's better to position them where they're going to be. And what I can do is I can create two lines. So I'm going to create one line, we'll give it an ID of caret mean, and I'll give it a class name of mean, and that will represent the line for the caret mean. And we need to close that element, and then I can create another one. Needs to collapse at the same location. Okay, and then I can create another one for the price mean. So that will represent the lines, and we'll let React take care of that. And then the next thing, it doesn't like my alignment. Okay, here we go. Then the next thing we need is we need two text elements. So I'll create a text element and let's give it an ID of caret text, and I'll give it a class name of mean text and close that. And the same with the price text. So I'm just gonna duplicate that text and I'll just add a price text. And now that I have those two elements, those four elements, I got the caret mean, I got the price mean, I got the text for the caret and the text for the price. The next thing I need to do is I need to overlay a rectangle, and that rectangle will sit in the bounded area of the chart, and it's going to listen to changes in the mouse move event. So what we need to do is I need to set the width to the size of the bounded width. So dimension that bounded width, and I need to do the same for the height. So I need to set the height to the bounded height. Then I need to set my events. Again, I can do it with D3, but it makes much more sense to do it here with React. So I can create an on mouse move event, and I can create on mouse out event and listen to those events. And then inline, I can what I can do, I can take that synthetic event from D3 and pass it to another component. Let's collapse that. So I can create a function, let's call it on mouse move handler, and we need to pass the event, and the same with the mouse out. So we can create an event and we can listen to the event and pass that data to, let's call it on mouse out handler. We don't need the event when we mouse out because we're just going to set the opacity to 0. Another good practice is to do stop propagating. That way our event is not going to bubble and cause an infinite loop or all kind of side effects that we didn't intend to do. So it's always good practice to use the event stop propagating. If you worked with HTML, it's the same way. And then the other thing on the rectangle, when it first entered the screen, we should set the fill to alpha 0. And if you remember, when we're using the X value, if we put 2, 4, 6, the last two elements are the alpha. This way we don't want to see the rectangle on the screen. And then we also want to make sure that it's styled with a transform that starts from the left top corner. So, and if you want to make sure that it's covered correctly, you can change the fill color just to make sure that it's that it got set correctly. I forgot to put translate. We need to close this in a single quote. Translate. Okay. Now we need to create those events. So let's set up those events. we can set them up here. So we can create a constant on mouse move event equal and on mouse out event. On mouse out event, we're not passing the actual mouse event, and on mouse move event, we're passing the event. So we just need to make sure that it's casted as React synthetic event. Okay. It's looking like I'm getting a lot of errors. Let's see why. I didn't close the rectangle tag. So let's make sure the rectangle tag is closed and formatted correctly. Okay, great. Now let's start from the mouse out. On the mouse out event, what we really want to do is we want to set the opacity of all of our elements to 0, right? So we need to select all the elements that we're using and set them to 0. So we can just use D3 for that. So we can do D3 select and then use all the elements we're using, and we can set the style for the opacity to 0. And we have really 4 elements. We got the 2 mean lines and we got the 2 text line. So we need to use the, we call it, let's see. We can really do it by the class name, so we can save calling it 4 times. So what we can do, you can see it's matching our class name. So we can call everything with the class name of mean, which would be both of them. So we can do that. We can do select all with everything with a mean and set the opacity to 0, and the same with the text. All the text has the same class name, mean text. So we can set all of them with the mean text style opacity 0. That really saves us calling it 4 times. Then for the on mouse move event, what we need to do is we can also take help from D3. What we can do is we can take the X and Y position from our synthetic events. Because they're matching HTML, it's just going to work like HTML even though it's JX, and if we pass the event into our D3 pointer, that will give us the X and Y location. We're going to need to do some calculation with the scales, so we need to make sure that we set a constant of the scale. We can just copy it from here, from a memorize, use callback, and now we'll have the scales, so we can calculate things. Then we need to call our elements and just position and set them on the screen. So we need to select all the elements that we need. So we're going to have 4 elements, right? And then we need to set the opacity to 1 on all the elements that we're going to be using. And then we need to set all the different properties. And so, for example, if we want to set the caret mean, we need to set the opacity to 0, and then we need to set all the different attributes. The attributes that we need to set for the mean line is x1, x2, y1, y2. So we can do it like this: x1, x2, and y1 and y2. For the x1, we can just use the x location. And for the x2, we need to set the bounded area, so it's going to position it at the end of our width. So dimension bounded width, and then for the y, for the x, we want it to position at 0. So it's going to go from 0 for the caret all the way to the width, and then for the y, we can just use the y position of the mouse. Okay, so it's going to start from 0 to the bounded width, and for the y, it's gonna just align to our mouse movement. And then we can do the same, similar approach we can take with the price mean. So for the price mean, we need to, again, to set the opacity to 1, and then the x1 and x2 needs to be the x position of the mouse, and the y for the price needs to start from 0 and go all the way for the bounded height. Then for the text, what we need to do is we need to create two variables to kind of handle the current caret value and the current price value. To do that, we can use our scales. So we haven't done this before, but the scales has a reverse method. So if we have the location in pixel, but what we want to do is we need to convert from the pixel to the actual value so we can display that. So what we can do is we can use invert, and we can pass the location of the y, and that's going to invert the pixel into a value we can use in our text element. And the same for the price. We can just use the x scale and pass the x value, and that will convert it back to the price, to the actual price, so we can use it in our text element. And then for the text element, we need to call our element, which was, we had two elements, right? We had one for the caret text, and we need to set the opacity to 1. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to position it. So for the caret text, we need to, both of them, we need to set the x, we need to set the y, and we need to set the text, the actual text we're going to be displaying. There you go. And we need to do the same for the price text. So for the price text, we need to set the opacity, the x, y, and text attribute. For the caret text, the x position is going to be our dimension bounded width. So bounded width. And then we need to shift the text a little bit before. So it's going to be at the end of the line, but a little bit before. And for the y, we can position it at the location of the mouse, y position, but just put it a little bit before, so it won't be on the mean line. And for the text, we can just type in caret, and pass in the caret value we calculated using the inverted method, and we can change it to fixed 2 to make sure it's not giving us more than 2 function fraction digits, otherwise it's just going to be this long text. And similarly for the price text, what we can do is we can set the x location or the x of the mouse, then we need to add some values so it's positioned a little bit above it, right, for the price, so it's a little bit above it, otherwise it's going to go over our mean line. And for the y location, we can just position it all the time on the top, so it's just going to show nicely. And then for the text value, we can just type in price with the $sign and set our template style price that we set over here. And we can do to fixed, we can set it with 0 fractions digit, because you know, if someone buying a diamond ring for $1,000, it doesn't care if it's 20 cents. We want it to be full number. It's just going to be more readable. And then the other thing that I already done is I created CSS for the mean. I gave it a color of gray, and it's dashed just like our mean line. And I gave some properties. I removed the points events, and the same for the mean text. I set it with a white color and some properties, and we can check if it's working. So go back to localhost and refresh. Okay, it looks like it's working, but you see when when the mouse is out, the text label is still there. So let's take a look. Let's look at our mouse out event. Yeah, it looks like I made an error here. Instead of the dot is for class name, all right? And I use the hash, which is for ID. So this needs to be a dot. Now let's go back. And let's mouse out. Great. So when I mouse out, both the mean lines and the text label disappear. So as you can see, putting that extra effort to add the interactivity can really help the user analyze the chart to understand what they're looking at, because now our chart is really giving us a good idea. For example, if I'm looking at, if I have $2,000 to spend, I can see that I should expect a diamond ring, or a diamond from 0.28 carat all the way to about 1 carat if I have 2,000. And if I have, for example, $1,000, so we can set our price to about $1,000, you can see that I can get from, I should expect from about 25 carat to up about 0.70 carat. It depends on other characteristic of the diamond. So really putting yourself in the user's shoes and try to use your own chart and try to analyze the results and what you've seen can really help you create a compelling story versus just getting the chart out there.